as a chef and as somebody who has had a passion for food since a very, very young age, this was a terrifying notion for me. Way more terrifying than brain surgery itself, I might add. For brain surgery, I was just like, okay, cool. They're going to drill onto my skull and they'll patch it up and I'll be fine. I might be sore and I'll take some meds for the pain. And that'll be good. But having somebody tell me that I could lose my sense of taste was very traumatizing.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm so glad you're here. I'm a physician, mom, and I am passionate about helping others reclaim their stories so they can build their most beautiful future. Today, we have an inspiring guest who has done just that. Chef Claire is a classically trained Cordon Bleu chef and founder of the internationally acclaimed Sharryn Roberto Restaurant Consultancy, as well as a nutritionist who specializes in functional food, bridging the gap between culinary alchemy and biology for functional well-being. Chef Claire has created a thriving business with locations around the world and an inspiring online community where she shares incredible recipes and her journey as a chef. 2 years ago, Claire was faced with a serious traumatic injury followed by the diagnosis of a brain tumor. She faced a long recovery and rode back to the life she had worked so hard to build. Today, Claire is here to share her inspiring story and how she is using her expertise in food, nutrition, and business to help reclaim her story and create inspiring, delicious, and healthy food for people around the world. Chef Claire, thank you so much for being here on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure. You are so inspiring. Your energy is magnetic, as anyone can see if you go on social media and watch how you share your recipes and your story. And you can sense your strength in everything you do. With all that you have been through in the past 2 years with your diagnosis and recovery, are there things that you've leaned on with regards to your mindset that helped you get to the place where you are now?
Haven't been asked that before. I think when something like this happens to you, you don't really have a choice. You have to either sink or swim. And in my case, this all started with a very unexpected, very traumatic accident that left me literally from consulting for global clients and creating, an incredible restaurant for them to not being able to walk and being physically stuck in a hospital bed, quite literally overnight. On my birthday, I might add. So there wasn't really much of a choice. I keep getting told and have been told over the last 2 years, wow, you're so strong. But I don't know, in my mind, that's the only way. We are meant to survive. That is the human condition. So for me, I just looked at it as this is what's happening next. And I can either wallow in self-pity and feel sorry for myself and be very sad, which I definitely had days like that. But just had to get on with it and see it for what it was. And there was some kind of silver lining and lesson, as there is in everything in life. And yeah, I just soldiered on, I guess.
On that topic, I want to share a quote from your Instagram page, if it's all right with you, that I found really inspiring talking about this experience that you had. And it's in the same vein. You said, quote, "In life, there will always be some sort of difficulty going on. We must all learn to continue to enjoy life whilst solving it." And I thought it's such a beautiful perspective. And it is similar to what you've just shared with us. How do you think you came to this mindset? Was it always a part of you, this, life gives me lemons and I make lemonade? Or was it something that you learned through life experiences?
I have had quite a challenging life, I think. Also, I've been told by many people. So maybe I have learned it along the way. Just, how to pivot, how to survive. I think I have been a survivor my whole life. I've done a lot of mindfulness work as well, and self-development work as well. And I suppose that all helps to, create the person we are today in this moment.
So rewinding to 2 years ago, as we said off the top, these experiences that we're alluding to, you had just gotten married to your lovely husband, and you were both very busy running your business, which was steadily growing. I understand having, record times, just doing better and better, when you broke your hip and had to deal with the recovery on top of everything else. And then you were faced with the diagnosis of a brain tumor. How did the hip fracture happen? Because it's not something we necessarily always hear in someone in, your age group, your demographic. So that might be, interesting for people to understand. And I don't know if there was a related, a thread between those two. And how did you come to learn that you had a brain tumor?
So it was my birthday. It was 5 a.m. and my lovely husband was surprising me with a morning adventure into the Dubai desert sand dunes to watch the sunrise and just, experience the beauty of the desert. And yeah, we literally just got back from honeymoon, just got married. We were about to move into our new apartment, and yeah, into the desert we go in a 4x4 that we'd hired a driver. And we got out of the car and we were standing observing this magnificent view. And we were like perched on top of, I can't say that it was an enormous sand dune. It was, you could run down comfortably and, be okay. So we decided to do so, and I just slipped on the sand. That is what happened. It's ridiculous. It's very anticlimactic. It's not like some enormous car accident or anything like that. It was just me slipping on the sand, because the sand in the sand dunes of the desert, it's very fine and it is very slippery. And I'm very hyper flexible, so I can do the splits easy. And that's kind of what happened. I slipped, I went into the splits, I overextended, and I quite literally just fell on my side, on my right hip. And as that happened, in hyperextension, we kind of heard like a crack. And I've got a very naturally high pain threshold. I always have my whole life. And I kind of just thought that like maybe I'd pulled something, or I'd never broken a bone in my body before in my life. I'd never sprained anything. I'd never strained anything, nothing. I'd never fractured, nothing had ever happened to me. I was 38 years old and I did not know what was happening. I couldn't breathe because the pain I was experiencing was so bad that it was taking over my entire body. So I was like short of breath. And Gary, my husband, couldn't quite understand what was going on. He thought I was joking. And I had broken my hip. I'd fractured the femoral neck of my hip, but we did not know this at the time. But when they tried to get me up, Gary and the driver, they realized something was very, very wrong. And I said, there's something very wrong. So thankfully we were in a place like Dubai. Dubai is incredible when it comes to this kind of thing. They had an ambulance, a proper like off-road ambulance in the desert within 10 minutes of calling. Wow. I was in the ambulance, and yeah, all I wanted and was hoping and praying for was to pass out. That's all I wanted, because the pain was just unbearable. So they had given me just like an inhaler, but it had like really strong pain meds in it. And I was really inhaling as hard as I could, but it was not helping. And they transferred me, once we got to the road, they transferred me to the road ambulance. And then by this stage, I was very out of it. So it's very patchy in my memory. But so Gary tells me we literally just rushed off to the trauma unit and went into the emergency room, and they assessed my case and they put me into a CT, and they were like, she's got a major fracture and she needs to go into surgery right now because of where the fracture is. It's very close to arteries in that area and like a big blood supply. So it was kind of like a life or death situation. She needs to get in, otherwise there could be internal bleeding, etc. And unfortunately, a major car crash came in just before me. So they unfortunately went in first, and I had to wait 8 hours.
Oh.
Yeah. And let's just say, I'm usually a very kind and understanding person, but in the ER, I was screaming at nurses. I was screaming at nurses because nobody wanted to give me more morphine, and I just needed more morphine. And they were like, my dear, we've given you the max that we can give you for your weight. We've gone over. Anyway, so I think that was probably one of the worst aspects of the past 2 years, was just like lying there for 8 hours just in absolute pain. And just that is what you can define trauma as. It was nutty. Anyway, so I went in for surgery finally, and they had to put 2 massive bolts into my hip. And yeah, I woke up the next morning and was very much in disbelief as to like what had just happened. And it was in those moments the next morning that myself and Gary, who are both in health and, qualified in, wellness, and we were like, this is not normal. A 38-year-old should not be fracturing or breaking their hip, let alone the femoral neck area. And we asked if I could get a DEXA scan, and all of the doctors and nurses, they just kind of fobbed us off and said, that's not necessary. She's way too young. And, we said, well, yeah, she's way too young. She should not have this kind of injury. But anyway, nobody really wanted to listen to us. And I was sent home after however long I'd been in the hospital for, I don't remember. And that began the journey of learning how to do everything again. My husband had to do everything for me, quite literally. Like I couldn't do anything. It was even difficult for me to sit up. So, showering me, taking me to the toilet in the middle of the night. We had to sleep in separate rooms because I had to sleep in a certain way, only on my back. It was a disaster. It was horrible. I joke about it now, but it really was a very, very tough time. And it was a very long recovery. But in that long recovery, we just continued to ask more and more questions about why this had happened. And eventually I actually had to go for a second surgery after, I think it was 6 months in. My entire team in Dubai, again, Dubai is incredible with this kind of thing. I had an entire team from, physiotherapists to, of course, I had my orthopedic surgeon and osteopaths. Everybody was just amazing. And they could all see that my recovery was very slow, and they didn't really understand why this was happening. Because I'm a very healthy person, I've always been very active. It's just not normal that I was taking so long to do things like stand again, start walking again. Yeah. And my mental resilience is very strong. I have a very strong mind. So it wasn't making sense that with my strong mind, I was still in like this setback mode. So they all discussed and agreed as a team that they needed to put me into a second surgery because the bolts that they had put into my hip were too big for my frame. I'm quite a small person, and these bolts were rather enormous, and they were kind of jutting out and sort of pressing on my soft tissue. So things like sitting and all that kind of stuff was very painful. So anyway, I had a second surgery. They removed the bolts, which is kind of unlikely, but in this case, it needed to happen. And again, we asked for DEXA scans. Again, we were denied.
Wow.
So fast forward probably another 6 months. So this would have been then 1 year after everything had happened. At the 1 year mark, I still was not walking properly. I was walking with a limp. It was very frustrating for somebody like me that is, I mean, as a chef, you stand for 14 hours. Going from that to not standing, not being able to stand at all and only being able to lie on your back and essentially do nothing, that was difficult. So a year in, we decided that it was time to just go and figure things out ourselves and go and figure out, why this happened. At the time, my hormones were just all over the place. I hadn't had a menstrual cycle for a very long time. We know that like with trauma, this can often affect a woman's menstrual cycle, but just things weren't right. And we just needed to go figure it out, even though nobody wanted to listen to us, and we did. And I had to fight for the blood work as well, believe it or not. They didn't want to do blood work on me because they didn't think it was necessary, but I did a little bit of shouting again and I got my way. The tests came back. The doctor said, "You've got enormously high levels of prolactin. Are you breastfeeding?" I was like, "No, definitely not breastfeeding." She's like, "Okay, don't worry. It could be a brain tumor, but that's totally normal." In that moment, that is when my faith in the medical world kind of did a bit of a decline. Because one, she said this to me over the phone, and two, she said that a brain tumor was normal. So I said to her, I'm like, "But what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, we will test again, and if the results come back the same way, we will then send you for an MRI to see if it is indeed a brain tumor." And I said, "There's no ways I'm waiting. You're going to send me the MRI now." Again, I had to fight, and I got my way, and they sent me for the MRI, and lo and behold, there was a brain tumor. Now, this is where the interesting side comes in. This brain tumor was sitting on my pituitary gland, which, as we know, is essentially the master house for hormones. So this brain tumor had been affecting my hormone production, particularly my estrogen and all of the lovely hormones that make us lovely women. And because I had not had estrogen for so long, it had led to osteoporosis, which is what we found out a few months after finding that I had a brain tumor. So it was first breaking the hip, then it was finding out that it was a brain tumor, and then it was finding out that all of this had led to osteoporosis. So the first thing I wanted to do was to take the tumor out of my head, which again, doctors thought I was a little bit crazy to say that, which I still to this day don't understand, because in my black and white mind, if you've got a brain tumor, why would you want it to continue to be there? Wouldn't you want to take it out? And they said to me, "But brain surgery is very drastic." And I said, "Well, having a brain tumor is very drastic too." And they said, "Well, you can go on to meds." And I said, "Are the meds going to dissolve the brain tumor?" And they said, "No, they just control the brain tumor." So they essentially, it's actually a Parkinson's medication, cabergoline. It's what they treat Parkinson's with. It's just a very smaller dose. For me, medication has never worked. I'm very sensitive, and I don't even take painkillers in my life just because it just has like a tremendous effect on me. So I knew that this would not be the way to go for me. But unfortunately, in the medical world, they want you to kind of follow the rules and follow the steps before looking at things like surgery, particularly brain surgery. So I had to play their game, unfortunately. And I started taking these meds, and as I predicted, I was rushed to the emergency room twice because of the very intense side effects that I experienced from things like heart palpitations, shortness of breath, like passing out, having absolutely zero energy. Like, it was crazy. I was like hallucinating. They were very crazy meds. So after that experience, they still would not give me the surgery. They wouldn't perform the surgery. They said to me they would halve the dosage. So I had to go through all of that again. And again, I was sent to the emergency room with the same side effects. And then finally they listened. They're like, okay, we will do brain surgery. We'll take it out. It's very unlikely, but we will do it. And I had to wait a little while for brain surgery to happen. The day finally came around. I was prepped for surgery. It was literally on the operating table. They had given me the anesthesia. And just before going into theater, they'd taken my blood to just do like a routine check on where my hormone levels were sitting to see where the prolactin was. Because essentially how much prolactin you have is like how angry this tumor is or how aggressive it is. And they need to see that it's not growing, because if it grows, being where it is on the pituitary, it's very close to the optic nerves. And that's, of course, dangerous because it can lead to blindness. So they needed to do the bloods to see if the prolactin had increased. And they took my blood. They gave me anesthetic. They put me under. I was in the operating room on the theater, completely out. And the nurse comes in, says to the surgeon, here are the blood results. The surgeon looks, and my prolactin was completely normal. Now, I had been taking cabergoline for however many months before the surgery, which of course brings the prolactin to normal level. That's the point of the drug, right? And because I'm so sensitive, that my prolactin didn't come to normal with cabergoline. Mine actually went to below normal, which is also not good, like way below normal. And it usually has an afterlife of staying in the body for like a day or two. But because I'm so sensitive, it lingered in my body for a long time, which is why my test results showed that my prolactin was normal. Now, my neurosurgeon is a wonderful man, and he said, ethically, he cannot open my brain and take a tumor out when the blood work is showing what it's showing. So my husband is sitting in the coffee shop of the hospital waiting for his wife to come out of brain surgery. And 5 minutes into brain surgery, he sees the neurosurgeon walk into the coffee shop and his heart just falls into the floor. Because what else are you going to think, you know?
Yeah.
And my neurosurgeon immediately said, don't worry, she's fine. Anyway, so they had to bring me around. I didn't understand what was happening, because as soon as they woke me up in recovery, the first thing I did was like feel my face and feel my head. And I was like, but hang on, what's going on? So we had to wait. I mean, it's not, with me like saying this whole story, it is really crazy, this story. We had to wait a few months to go for brain surgery again, believe it or not. And I had to go through all of that all over again. And we did. And they took the brain tumor out. And then it was recovery after brain surgery. And here we sit today.
Well, one of the things I really appreciate you sharing that story so thoroughly, because I know it's really painful to share and to relive talking about that. I think it really demonstrates, you mentioned the trauma of your initial accident and your experience with that, which is hellaciously traumatic in those 8 hours where the pain is so severe that it's kind of like, it's like condensed, right? The experience. But then you kind of went through the same thing, but just, you know, the volume was different, but it was another, you know, really long period of medically induced trauma. And I think it's really important to share those stories. It's important for us as physicians to learn from those stories. It's important for people to be able to share their experiences, because we can't do better if we don't sit in this space where we say, hey, these are the these are all of the missed opportunities that happened for me. And I learned from them. They made me resilient and they made me tough. But I would really love if the next lady didn't get gaslit for a year and just was listened to. And so I really want to encourage anyone who's listening. I know we as women, you know, we can have a lot of trust in institutions, and in some ways that's great, but we also have our lived experiences, and we know that sometimes we have to stand up for ourselves, and we have to push back, and that's okay. You know, your medical provider isn't going to be mad at you for standing up for yourself, right? Or even if maybe their ego comes out a little bit in the moment. So, no, I'm the surgeon, I know what I'm doing. At the end of the day, if you help them get to the right diagnosis and you save their butts, like, they're going to be happy too. So, like, it's okay to be the squeaky wheel. It's more than okay. It's necessary. So I appreciate you sharing that and sharing just how challenging that was. And I want to also talk about something else that was challenging that you were told before you finally got surgery, your neurosurgery done, about your sense of taste and smell and how that would be affected from the surgery. Can you share with us the story of how you learned about that, and how that impacted your decision and your feelings, and again, that trauma of even going into the surgery?
Yeah. And I'd like to really reiterate what you just said. It is so important to speak up for yourself. So important. There's so many people that I know in the world that are too scared to speak to their doctor and speak up, and think that because they wear the doctor's coat that it's only their way. But honestly, my neurosurgeon, after everything that had happened, he said he learned from me. You know, that's a win in my book if that happens. So yeah, especially as women, I think we really do need to speak up more. Anyway, my neurosurgeon said to me in the first initial consult that he had with me, well, he first said he's not going to do the surgery. It's not necessary. He said, a tumor of your size, because my tumor was very small. It was these pituitary tumors, they can range from like 2 millimeters, which are known as like the microadenomas, to, I think they can go up to like 6 centimeters. Mine was sitting at around 4 millimeters. And they said, you know, when they saw this, they said, it's impossible that something that small is having such an effect on your hormones. It can't be what's doing it. And of course, they were proved wrong after surgery. But anyway, he did not want to perform the surgery because he thought that such a small thing wasn't doing anything. And he thought that, you know, the trauma of performing brain surgery was like way too much for something like this. And then he scared me by saying that if he does the surgery, I have a very high risk and probability of losing my taste completely, because the surgery is performed through the nose. They go through the nose and then they drill at the back of your nose through your skull that way to access the pituitary, because of course that's where it's located. And by going through the nose, of course, our olfactory things are there, and that's what gives us our sense of smell, which therefore gives us our sense of taste. So I think as a chef, and as somebody who has had a passion for food since a very, very young age, this was a terrifying notion for me. Way more terrifying than brain surgery itself, I might add. For brain surgery, I was just like, okay, cool. They're going to drill onto my skull, and they'll patch it up, and I'll be fine. I might be sore, and you know, I'll take some meds for the pain, and that'll be good. But having somebody tell me that I could lose my sense of taste was very traumatizing. And when I woke up from surgery, it was the first thing I asked for, was something to taste, to see if my sense of taste was there. And actually, my husband got it all on camera. It's actually on my Instagram, where I'm eating a very horrible hospital boiled carrot.
I know, why
that was so
why is
overcooked.
that what was brought to you?
Exactly.
Why?
Not sure. It was obviously what was on the lunch tray that day.
Well, it's soft. You just had surgery. It might have some,
Mhm.
they want you to try something soft. But if you
Yeah.
could have chosen as a
Mm.
chef, what would you have chosen to be the food that proved your surgeon wrong?
Wow. Maybe something with a very large amount of beautiful cacao, because I am very much a passionate cacao person. And with all of its amazing antioxidants and healing properties and theobromine and all of that, would have done wonders for my recovery as well. Uh, Maybe that. But I don't know. I think coming out of surgery, you don't feel so nice. And you kind of are a bit nauseous. So
Mm.
maybe a really good piece of juicy, very ripe fruit would have been something I would have asked for. Something very hydrating, maybe a really great juicy papaya that's like orange in its flesh because it's so ripe. Maybe that.
Hmm. I love that. I love this conversation because it's really like getting into the sensations, the texture, and that feeling of I've just come through something that technically could have killed me, right? When we get a mole removed, there's the consent form, and at the bottom it's like and death. Like you could
Yeah.
die,
And we
even though
can
it's
maybe kill you.
and you might die. And you're like,
Mhm.
okay, that's not going to
Okay.
happen. And then every once in a while, unfortunately, something, and this isn't funny, of course, but like things do
Yeah.
happen with anesthesia and bleeding and
Yeah.
unexpected results, right? So that's why the informed consent says and death at the bottom. And so when you go through any procedure, big or small, afterwards you seek comfort. And this is
Yeah.
something that you have talked about with your food and your work, tapping into people's comfort and their memories through food.
Mhm.
And I think that's a superpower that chefs have. Do you think that most chefs really lean into that superpower of trying to trigger people's memories? I know, like around the holidays, I think people do, right? They have all these seasonal foods that,
Mm.
they tap into our nostalgia and they get us to buy the food and eat the food. But in general, do you think that that's something that chefs really lean into enough, or that maybe could be done more to get people a bit more engaged with their food and less engaged with maybe the unhealthy part of food? Like, right, we want the fried food and all that, but actually no, like, let's think about that, those colors and those textures and those memories.
Yeah. I think good chefs do this. um yeah, I mean, yeah, I think good chefs do this, but are there a lot of those in the world? I'm not sure. I think I've always said from my time as a chef and in my career that we really have a very large responsibility on our hands because we're essentially feeding people. And unfortunately, our food system is rather horrendous at the moment, unless you are really tapped in and, you know, looking after yourself when it comes to what you're putting on your plate or in your mouth. And a lot of restaurants are restaurants because they're a business. And in order for clientele to come back, they want the food to be extraordinarily delicious, but also profitable. So what does that mean? Lots of sugar, lots of fat, lots of salt. Definitely not organic produce, definitely not seasonal produce. Um, so are a lot of chefs doing this? Like I said, the good ones probably are. How many good ones are there in the world compared to not good ones? I think the balance needs to shift a little in that department for sure, because at the end of the day, health is all we have. And from somebody that spent 2 years without my health, I can honestly say that you could have given me $1 million and I wouldn't have wanted it. All I wanted in that time was to be healthy again, to be able to go for a walk outside, to be able to, have a conversation with loved ones where I wasn't in pain, to be able to like sleep through the night. Like it's absolutely priceless, our health. And so many people don't realize that honestly, like, it begins with what you're putting into your body, from the water that you're drinking to the food that you're eating to the air that you're breathing. Yeah, it's something that I'm so passionate about, which is why I went into nutrition alongside, after qualifying as a chef, because I think they really do go hand in hand. We can't just be obsessing over food and the taste and the texture and all of that, and without thinking of the other side of it, and that food is essentially like nutrition, and there is a way that you can make food delicious and nutritious, and that's really what I do, right? I mean, my restaurant consultancy is my whole ethos is healthy food that does not taste like cardboard, that people want to come back for. And yeah, it just makes me sad, I think, that so many people don't understand this. And so many people think that healthy food has to be boring. And so many people think that nourishing yourself and cooking for yourself is really a chore or very difficult or very complex, when it's not. You can really make the simplest, quickest, easiest things be very delicious, and very nutritious at the same time. And a lot of people don't realize that whole food ingredients, fruit, veg, nuts, seeds, grains, are very oftentimes the most affordable things in the supermarket. It's these processed convenience foods that the marketing giants like to make us believe we need, that are the things that are a little bit pricier, and the things that make people think that healthy food is expensive.
It's so interesting because I envision the grocery store, and we have something here in the States where, as physicians, if someone asks us about buying food, we would generally, to try to make it as simple as possible, we would say, just stay on the outside of the grocery store, right? Like, don't even go in the middle where all the processed food is. Just stay on the outside where the fresh food is, where there's minimal processing. And that's a good starting place. And then, so once you have those building blocks, then going somewhere like your social media where you really generously share these delicious recipes, it's like, okay, what am I going to do with these? Because I think that's a big part of eating healthy and fresh, is that for many people, and I think especially here in the States, especially in places where it is a food desert, which we have many places like that, especially in cities, where people don't have access even to fresh food, or it wasn't modeled for them growing up because of access issues for their caregivers.
Yeah.
They don't know where to start. And there are a lot of bad things about social media, but there are some really great things. And those things are things like your channel, where you're showing people how to use these incredible ingredients and how to get rid of this false separation of food from nutrition. Food is nutrition. Food is healthcare, right?
Yep.
Like, you don't have to go to the doctor every day, but you do have to eat something every day. And you can invest in your health by the way you choose to access your nutrients, what you eat, how you move your body, all these things. There are opportunities to invest in yourself. And as you said in your quote about the challenges, okay, but what's the way forward? Like, today may be rough, but what are little things that I can put in my bank of health so that I'm working towards a better tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah, it's been a passion of mine for a long time to be able to give back to the incredible community that I have online. They were truly like total strangers sending me gifts, like sending me the most beautiful, inspiring messages when I was going through all of this over the past 2 years. I was in tears a lot because I couldn't understand how all these people that I'd never met before, I'd never seen before, were just so unbelievably kind and caring and supportive. And in those 2 years, particularly the first sort of 18 months, I'd say, when I literally was bedbound with not being able to do anything with my hip. All I wanted to do was be in the kitchen and make anything, just anything. And when it got to the point where I'd transitioned from wheelchair to be able to go onto like a little walker that I was allowed to be on for like 30 minutes at a time, I would go and stand for 30 minutes in my kitchen and make something, anything. Easy things, because it needed to be quick for me because I only had 30 minutes of standing. And I decided that this was going to be the thing that I was focused on, because I need to be focused and creating something in my life at all times. It's what keeps me going. It's what keeps me thriving. I have a lot of creative energy that needs to be used. And filming these little recipes every day was medicine for me. It really was medicine for me. And when I began, I thought to myself, this is what I can do to give back to all of these amazing, kind people. So quite literally for 2 years, throughout everything that happened, I filmed recipes and wrote recipes. And I now, actually, what are we in? We're in March. On the 3rd of March, I started sharing these recipes. And there's about 100 of them. And I'm literally sharing a recipe every day for 100 days. So basically, you're getting a whole cookbook on my Instagram for just because. So yeah, very easy recipes, very easy ingredients, nothing complex, because I have been told by my mother-in-law in particular that sometimes my chef recipes that I've given to her, of course, not really to the rest of the world, are very complex. And where do you even get these ingredients from? So I made it a lot simpler for everybody online to enjoy. And it's just, I had so much fun doing it, you know? I had so much fun doing it. And to be able to like share that fun with everybody as well it's been a cool project to get me back into the flow of restaurant consulting again and going around the world and opening restaurants for clients. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And I highly recommend everyone go and watch. One thing, they're really beautifully done. Your cinematography is on point, which I'm a novice cinematographer. So I really love when people's content goes that extra mile, and it's really beautiful, and it captures the moment, it captures the memories. You know, you feel like you're in the kitchen with you, and you really did a fantastic job with that.
Well,
despite
thank you.
despite all of the challenges you were facing to get it done, and probably the breaks you had to take. So it's like, oh man, I did my 30 minutes already and gotta come back to this later. So it's really,
there was like breaks between like, okay, I need to take a break for a week because I need to go for brain surgery quick.
Oh my God. You're incredible. Like I said at the very beginning of our conversation, your energy, your focus, which is something that you mentioned, are incredible. So when we talk about building habits, achieving goals, right? We think about some goalposts or maybe words that we're going to use as our thing that we come back to. And so I heard you say focus, and I think focus was something important for you. Were there any limiting beliefs that you realized that or recognized that it would be healthy to let go of as you were going through this and recovering?
Oh yeah, 100%. In the beginning of all of this, I went through major self-doubt, and I think because my identity had become Chef Claire, I was at a really big trajectory in my life with my career, and you know, having literally gone around the world to open restaurants, and I'd just come off the back of a very, very big project. I did it's actually the largest gym in the world based in Kuwait, and I completely overdid their entire culinary department for them. So I'd been there for maybe 6 weeks before getting married, honeymoon, and then breaking my hip. And I was still very much in that like very hectic chef mindset. So going from that to going to lying on your back and not being able to do anything was a very strange, it was a very strange moment in my life where I thought to myself, I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? Like, how is this happening? I have nothing to do, nothing to do. And it was in those moments that I thought to myself, will I ever get back to being me? And then I got to moments of, but hang on, who am I? If I had to take chef away from who I am, who am I at my core? So there was a lot of that happened, lots of imposter syndrome, lots of, there were definitely moments where I did feel sorry for myself. I mean, majority of the time it was stop feeling sorry for yourself. You just need to get on with it. But there was a lot of the opposite as well. Of course, I'm human. I'm not, the Dalai Lama, who's great, by the way. I was very, very lucky to sit in on one of his talks when I went to India. But I actually explained this in the first video that I launched this 100-day series with. I explain my entire thought process that I went through, through this whole ordeal of just thinking, will I ever get back to me? Or am I just an absolute failure in life and I'm going to be bedbound forever and I'm going to lose my identity. No one's going to see me as a chef. Lots of ego comes in as humans. We like to put labels on things. And eventually I got out of that. And eventually I got to the point of, I just essentially need to take things one moment at a time, not even one day at a time, because in that time, there was very different moments in each day, from being totally distraught, totally in pain, then maybe a little bit of elation coming in because I could move my leg in a certain way that hadn't happened for a long time, to wallowing in self-pity, to thinking, who am I? There was a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Then there was a lot of trauma coming in with having terrible nightmares of having the accident happen to me again and not being able to sleep. And there was a lot. There was a lot of emotion. A lot happened. But at the end of it, like I said, I had to focus on one moment at a time, one foot in front of the other, metaphorically, of course, because I couldn't do it in the beginning. But when I could do it, one foot in front of the other. And that's essentially what got me through that, and focusing on things that brought me joy. And I think that's a lot of times what I've come back to in my life whenever I have been in a sort of in survival mode or going through a really difficult time of life or going through anything that was traumatic, trying to find little things that brought me joy. Simple things like watching the leaves through the window outside on the trees blow in the wind, or appreciating the purr sound of my cat, or, feeling like the sun come in from the window and hit my cheek and it's nice and warm. Just tiny things like that take you out of your head and back into your body and pivot you from that negative mindset into an appreciative mindset. Because at the end of the day, even though I was going through what I was going through, I was practicing appreciation and gratitude every day, no matter what was happening. I was appreciating the pain, not all the time, because like I said, I'm still human, but I was still appreciating the pain because it still meant that I was alive. I didn't die. It's I can appreciate that I can feel that horrible pain in my leg, which means that I survived the accident and things are going to be good again.
Something that I was imagining when you were, I'm a very visualization keyed in person. And as you were describing your journey, I was imagining these waves where it's a wave comes in and it crashes and it's turbulent. And, if you've stood on a beach and you feel what's happening to your toes when the wave comes, I mean, it's just sucking the sand and little crabs are getting drawn out and it's very turbulent. It looks pretty from the surface, but it's a turbulent experience for that micro environment. and then it goes out, and then it's beautiful and calm and quiet, and then it comes back. And I'm imagining in these moments of when the wave is there and you're sitting on the sand, you're where you are, right? You're not where you were before. You're not where you're going to be. Things are what they are. You're in that moment, and you ask yourself, who is Claire? When you are having those honest moments with yourself, what did you land on? What did you center yourself on? Who is Claire? If Claire in this moment isn't a chef, if Claire in this moment isn't running the business like she was months ago, who is Claire?
I would say I still ask myself that question maybe every day in my own practice. And essentially it comes down to, I am God, source energy, the universe, whatever you want to title it, reflecting back. So essentially, like, source energy is running through me, which is part of the tree, which is part of the mountain, which is sort of all energy that's flowing, really, and living this human experience, which is very fleeting. And we're all part of the same wheel, if you want to look at it like that. We're all connected in some way. And I think a lot of people get stuck in their head. I definitely got stuck in my head a lot. But it's when you realize that you are not your thoughts, you're not your labels, titles, what other people think of you, what you think of you. You're just living this experience for now. Yep.
It's really beautiful and really grounded. And it makes me think, so when we put on the hats, maybe, we talk about how we put on hats or we put on masks. Maybe that's okay. It's okay to say, I'm going to put on Chef Claire hat, but it's not who I am. It's a hat I really love to wear.
Yeah.
But if the hat is taken away, I'm still here because I'm a part of this source energy. So I really love that. But putting on the Chef Claire hat, and recognizing now, as we have been so blessed to get to know you through this conversation, looking at how you share your recipes, your experience, your love of food, your love of nutrition, the visuals, the audio, everything through the lens of having this time with you and looking at the principles with which you run your food consultancy agency. There is that thread of groundedness, of being environmentally sensitive in the way that you practice food preparation and source food, reducing food waste, and also being very aware of the nutritional aspects. How can we as home cooks, because most of us, as you alluded to before, are not chefs, but we cook every day. How can we make choices that are environmentally sensitive, help us reduce food waste, and are nutritionally aware? Do you have some tips for us from the Chef Claire hat that can help us, again, stay grounded in our relationship with food and how we are preparing it?
Yes, I have lots of tips. Lots. But essentially, like, the simple ones would be, as I mentioned, whole foods. So what's local in not even your supermarket? If you can get to a farmer's market, that's even better, because the farmer's market produces way more alive. It hasn't been picked and sitting for a very long time and transported and maybe like come from a different part of the world. You want to try and get, as local as possible. And oftentimes the local stuff is going to be more affordable. And if you're going to a farmer's market and supporting the local farmers with the local produce, it's like feeding this really great cycle of life, which is going to be beneficial for all. And you might get like a really great friend out of your, local supplier. They often are. So definitely whole foods first. I'd also recommend, if anybody has any kind of balcony garden, terrace, large windowsill, you can really grow things, a tremendous amount of things, very easily from your own home. Things like simple things, tomatoes, herbs, greens, cucumbers, like really, like just buy some seeds, not even buy some seeds, harvest your own seeds. The next time you eat a tomato, save the seeds, plant the seeds. It sounds so complicated, but it really is simple. And it's such a great hack, because if you grow your own tomatoes, you never have to go and buy tomatoes again. I mean, that's a great saving. Compost if you can, to just, save on waste. It's such a simple thing to have a separate little bin or trash for your veg and fruit and, cooking scraps. Try and reuse things. If things come in glass packaging, I always save my glass packaging. I've got 150,000 glass jars in my pantry that are filled with, chia seeds or some nuts or some grains. Like, I've never bought glass jars because I've always used the ones that either my coconut oil came in or, that's, in my opinion, like, that's really great. I mean, obviously, if you can recycle, definitely recycle. Here where I am at the moment in Sweden, they take recycling to a whole nother level. We have 40,000 different recycling bins. Like, it is, I mean, Sweden is so efficient with recycling that they have to import other countries' trash to recycle their trash for them, because they don't have enough trash to recycle, because they recycle everything. That's how efficient. So it's like, if you can take a little tiny feather from their cap, it's great. And it also allows you, here, we've definitely been able to see, my husband and I, we don't like to buy things in plastic at all, because when you go through things like brain tumors and you go down the road of microplastics in your food, you also won't want things in plastic packaging, but that's a whole nother conversation. So we really try our best not to buy anything in plastic, but even so, when we take our recycling out, it is crazy how much human beings go through when it comes to packaging and just stuff. So definitely reuse where you can and try and be efficient with things. What else can I give as a tip with regard to food? When you go to the grocery store, take your own packaging. I mean, that goes without saying. Please don't take those horrible plastic packets at the fruit and veg section to weigh your fruit and veg. You don't need to do that. People at the grocery store think I'm crazy because I will take a bunch of apples in my hand or from my basket and put them on. And then they want to take that little sticky label that the price and barcode is on and stick it on something, like stick it on the plastic bag. And I'm like, I don't want the plastic bag. You can stick it on my shirt and I will give it to the person at the till. Yeah, I end up with like all these labels on my shirt when I get to it.
I haven't heard of that tip before. That's really fun.
I
think we need an Instagram photo to follow up after this episode airs.
Yeah. But I think it's more complicated. People make it more complicated than what it is. Being sustainable and being just mindful. If you can add like a little bit of mindfulness to your everyday routines, you kind of get into good habits, and it's like a muscle. You just work it and you practice, and eventually it becomes second nature to you, I guess.
I love it. And I think also if you're struggling with it and you're finding you're here in the States, it's not as common to be as mindful about the plastic use, especially the bags when you're checking out of the grocery, et cetera, as it is in Europe. I live in Europe part of the time in Prague, and there it's absolutely, no one's going to give you a plastic bag. It's certainly not for free. But here, that's really the default setting. So if you're struggling with it because it's a habit, and you want to build the new habit, maybe turn it into a game, right? Instead of penalizing yourself for forgetting. Give yourself points for remembering. Oh, this is exciting. I remembered to put the bags in the car. I did this. I reduced my plastic. I reused these bottles. So make it into a fun game. And I think that's much more effective for forming new habits than constantly getting frustrated with yourself about the mistakes you make, because we all make them every day.
Yeah.
And that's a segue into something that we like to do here on Talks with Dr. Shafer. When we have experts on the show, we like to play a game where I ask quick questions to help share your expertise with us, with the listeners, and also learn more about the things that you love as a chef and a food enthusiast. But we do it quickly, so we don't have time to overthink our answers. Are you game?
I'm game.
Okay,
love a good game.
Awesome. So, what are some of your favorite recipes? Let's say top 2, 3.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's quite an unfair question.
They're kind of supposed to be. They're like the quick, like first 2, 3 that come to your head.
Simple foods. I mean, I'm talking like boiled eggs and soldiers, oat porridge. Like, really, people think that chefs have these very complex, luxurious meals at home. We don't. We have very simple food, because at the end of the day, simple ingredients done well is the best kind of food.
I love that. So those are the foods for yourself every day. What about guests coming over? So your friend just rung you up and was like, okay, we're coming over for dinner with my new boyfriend. I need you to impress him. Go. What are you making?
Probably a really great Napolitana, fresh pasta, really great tomatoes, lots of garlic, really good fresh basil that's torn, not cut.
To help release the aromatics, the oils. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. When you are looking at a menu, so it's a new restaurant to you. What's the best way to choose a dish? You can only choose one. Where do you find the gold in the menu?
I will ask the waiter, what does the chef recommend? Because usually that is the thing that the chef wants to show off. And that's the thing that the chef has the most passionate about.
Or, sometimes I ask them, so like, because I was a waitress long ago, a very, very bad waitress. But I was a waitress once upon a time. And what are the foods that you would be the most excited if like you got a shift? You know what I mean? If you got a plate in your shift, like what's the thing on the menu that you would want to have? I think that's a good question to ask. I always ask whoever is the waiter for the evening, and I've never been disappointed by what they recommend. They're the experts, not me.
Yeah, that is very true. That is very true.
So it's date night. Where are you going out to eat?
Probably a Middle Eastern restaurant. Probably, because my husband and I really, really do love Middle Eastern cuisine. Like either like a good Lebanese, or, I mean, Iranian food is great. Wow. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. But somewhere in the Middle Eastern realm, because their flavors are just chef's kiss.
I love it. So now we're in the restaurant. What items on a menu are often overpriced for what you get? So you're like, okay, I'm going to skip that and I'm going to enjoy something else. What are the things that tend to be on menus that honestly are better to avoid?
Probably salad and soup. Those are the things that I would definitely avoid, because they are always very overpriced. And they do that deliberately because they can make a really good profit off of those ones. Just saying.
That's good to know. I have to tell you though, I love a really inventive salad out.
But how often do you get a really inventive salad?
Well, that's a fair question. But I love it. I love being inspired by the food that I eat out. That's what I love about eating out, is being inspired to then go at home and incorporate. Home. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's my favorite thing. So
I love that.
What is the surprising thing you order or prepare that is more delicious than anyone would imagine? Like the thing that everyone says, oh, I don't like that. And you say, oh, let me just prove to you that you love that.
There's a lot of these. So I need to think of, I know I'm supposed to do this quick, but this is really hard. So you must know, I will preface this. In my life, I've never been able to answer the question, what is your favorite X? Like, never. It's just not a game that I've been good at playing. So this is a really difficult game for me. But what have I turned people's mind? Like, oh God, I can't answer this. I have no idea. There's so many. I've made tahini brownies that have no sugar, no flour, totally plant-based, and people love them so much that Forbes contacted me to do them for Paris Fashion Week for the models and this massive Forbes party for Paris Fashion Week. And nobody believed that they were sugar-free, gluten-free, plant-based. Maybe those?
I love that. Well, I mean, if Forbes thinks so, I think we can definitely jump on that. And is it a part of the 100 days recipes? Can we find the recipe on your Instagram?
The recipe is somewhere on my Instagram. It's not part of these 100 days, but it is further down. Just scroll down. You'll find it.
It's all great. So just keep looking. You'll be inspired along the way, and bring a notepad to take notes. Okay, cravings for you, sweet or savory, which is the one you most often turn to? I think I know the answer from what you said.
Probably sweet. My I can't call it my kryptonite because it's not a weakness, because it's such a nutritious, amazing thing to have. And that is a date, particularly either a sukari date, which not many people know what that is, but I lived in the Middle East for a long time, and there is an enormous variety of dates if you go and research this. A sukari date that's either from Saudi Arabia or Kuwait, and it's dipped into tahini, but not any tahini, because I have a very strong passion about tahini. Tahini has to be very liquid and runny. So when you put your spoon in it and you lift it out, it's like you're lifting out liquid. That is how tahini should be. Not many people know that, because most tahinis on the market, especially if they're not like a proper tahini that comes from the Middle East, it's like this chalky, thick, grainy, horrible. I have a whole permanent story, actually more than one permanent story, talking about tahini. So again, you can go and just check out my Instagram on how to find the best tahini, what it needs to look like, what it needs to taste like, the things that you need to look out for on the label. It needs to be stone ground. It needs to be hulled. It needs to be slightly roasted, but not over roasted, because otherwise it's going to be bitter and burnt. It just needs to be good. And when you get a good juicy date and you dunk it in tahini and you put a little bit of flaky sea salt on it and you put that in your mouth, your world will change.
I love it. And I do. I've seen that video. So I do know now what tahini should look like. I wouldn't have known as a girl who was born in Indiana. I wouldn't have necessarily known. And now I know. And that's the beautiful thing about your site and all of the tips you're sharing. What are some foods that you've made for clients who are hoping for something that is filling and sustaining throughout the day, but won't leave them feeling bogged down? Like, what's a quick snack that you can have that will make you feel good and full, but not like, like you feel like after you eat fried food, you know?
It needs to be balanced, I think. So you need to have like a balance of macronutrients going in there. I often do like really cool macro bowls. So it'll be some kind of grain that's been like pre-soaked, so it's nice and digestible, and the phytic acid's been taken out of it by pre-soaking it. So either a millet, a quinoa, a wild rice, any kind of grain, and then any kind of protein. So if it's a plant protein, it'll probably be some kind of bean. I love tempeh, which is fermented soybeans. It's like a fermented soybean cake. It's really great for gut health, and it's got a really great texture and umami flavor. If it's not plant protein, then I don't know, maybe a poached egg or a nice piece of mackerel, which is the more sustainable version of salmon. And then, of course, something green. And I would always do a cooked veg and a raw veg, and then maybe like a little bit of fermented sauerkraut or kimchi or some kind of thing there. And then a fat would either be a tahini sauce or tahini drizzle. or a really good extra virgin olive oil vinaigrette of some kind. Easy, like nothing complicated. It's just a whole bunch of good ingredients that are cooked well in a bowl. And when you are ticking the boxes of everything in your bowl, from something salty, something sweet, something umami, something bitter, you need to hit all the taste profiles, and then you need to hit all the texture profiles as well. So something crunchy, something soft, something like sort of luxurious. All of these kinds of things feed your mind as well as your body. So your mind is not wanting more. You're not going to finish the meal and be like, I really am actually craving this. And this is actually an Ayurvedic principle. So Ayurveda, the ancient healing science modality that traditional Chinese medicine is actually based on, eating an Ayurvedic style of meal is very beneficial. I can highly recommend it. I've been doing it for a very long time. After I first found the world of Ayurveda, my mind was blown, and actually went to India and delved very deep into it. And it's very simple, but very effective.
I'm so grateful that we can absorb all of these lessons and tips, because they are so helpful. And I want to just remind people, we're busy. You know, you might have kids, you might have work duties, pets, whatever it is that you always prioritize over yourself. Right. And so you say, I'm just going to do the quick thing. I'm not going to make a healthy, nutritious meal because I don't have time. As you said, your health is your wealth. Your health is the ultimate thing. And the way that we get our nutrition, what we eat, how we eat, is really essential for investing in our health. And you deserve to invest in your health. You deserve that time. You deserve to carve that out. And you may find ways to change habits to get some time back and invest it in yourself in this way. And it is worth it. You are worth eating healthy, eating things that nourish not just your body, but your soul, as you said, by the way it's presented. There's so many opportunities for self-care through proper nutrition. So I just love everything you've shared. Last question. You are on a desert island and you can only eat 3 dishes until you're rescued. If you're rescued, what are those dishes?
Dates and tahini. That's one. But you can't count that as 2. That's one. Dates and tahini.
Okay.
Probably a really great ripe papaya. Really great and ripe. Needs to be like orange flesh. And then, a fresh coconut, because you can drink the coconut water and you can eat that soft coconut flesh and you'll never be dehydrated. And you'll essentially be, I think it's, you can do, I think they've done this before. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I am accurate here. They've done a blood transfusion before in an emergency situation using pure coconut water, because it has the same electrolyte balance that are, crazy.
I'm going to Google that, because I have not heard of that, but that's fascinating if it happened. And I think the world is just this crazy, amazing place. We have so much to learn. And as you mentioned, when we said, well, who is Claire? Claire is nature. Claire is energy, right? Claire is everything. We are everything. And there's so much to take from nature. I love the foods you chose, because they're all one thing. They could actually be on the island, which is great. And 2, they're so nourishing. And I feel so nourished from this conversation. And so I'm just so grateful to you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I had a really good time chatting to you.
Claire, how can our listeners connect with you, learn more about you, follow along, and be a part of what you are doing?
I would say Instagram is probably the most active place, which is just my name, which is a very interesting way of spelling it, but I'm sure you can give it to the listeners. Claire Sharryn Roberto. And then also I have a website, I guess. That's probably the second easiest way, which is clairesharrynroberto.com.
Wonderful. Everyone follow Claire I love all of the recipes that are dropping. They're great. Some of them are really intensive. You posted a lasagna that looked really delicious, and it reminded me of a way that
that's like a Sunday thing to do where you've got some time.
It reminded me of a way that I, as a vegetarian, that I prepare, kind of a meat substitute instead of buying the highly processed ones, doing the walnuts and mushrooms and onion, right? Like, so kind of getting that meaty taste and umami without meat, right? If that's a choice that you've made. So really complex recipes that you have there, but also really simple ones that show you how to make a nice sweet treat based on your experience working with private clients and their wants or their kids' wants, and how do you make things that the kids will actually eat and will satisfy their cravings. And I think again, something that you focus on with your work isn't just satisfying that first bite of the taste, but also keying into the memory and the sensation and the experience of eating and of food. So I think that's just amazing. So thank you again for being here. This has been so lovely. I want to thank our storytellers for being here as well. We hope you took away some great tips for embracing healthy habits in your life today and delicious food. Let us know what you loved and what you learned by engaging with us on Chef Claire's platform, as well as the Talks with Dr. Shafer platform. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show where you love podcasts so you don't miss any of the inspiring episodes we have coming up. Until next time, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Everyone